Hi, everyone, and welcome to another live episode of Marketplace Masters, brought to you by Merchant Spring, the leading marketplace analytics platform for Amazon agencies and Amazon vendors. Now, I am very excited because we have just released a suite of analytics specifically for Amazon vendors. So if you're an Amazon vendor, this is for you. If you're looking to improve your reporting, make sure to check us out at merchantspring.io. Now, Marketplace Masters is all about going deeper into the challenges that brands and agencies face to lift performance via practical actions and insights. I'm your host, Paul, and today we are going over the fundamentals of Amazon vendor in Australia, and specifically how to set yourself up for success. Now, to help me do this, I have invited my good friend, Warren Coxall, to join us and share his expertise. And before I hand over to him, let me just take the opportunity to introduce him. Warren is the founder of Totality, a Sydney-based e-commerce agency firmly focused on Amazon with a strong portfolio of vendor-central clients. Warren is also an Amazon seller himself, so brings a broad range of experience to the conversation today. Thank you for being on the show today, Warren.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate it. Nice to be here.
Always happy to talk about Amazon, especially in the Australian context. Obviously, very close to home for you and I, but also Amazon in Australia is really, it's still young, right? It's launched about 4 or 5 years ago. Still not the largest marketplace here in Australia yet, but growing very, very rapidly. So let's get into it and maybe start with the first question. Why Amazon? If I'm a CPG business in Australia or a brand owner, why should I even consider Amazon right now?
Yeah, well, I mean, we all know Amazon is one of the most successful companies in the world. And certainly they've got one of the largest e-com captured audiences in the world, but they're more than just a marketplace. So when I think about Amazon, and what gets me really excited is where they put their investment dollars. So they're investing in, I think their silver bullet really is Amazon Prime. They've got over 200 million people around the world who have Amazon Prime, which means that the first platform they go to look at when they're looking for online sales is Amazon, because it means they're going to get, more often than not, free shipping. But Amazon also has lots of flexible seller and fulfillment models to suit anybody. And from a seller's perspective, that might be a fulfilled through merchant model. It might be a fulfilled by an Amazon model, or equally in what we're going to be talking about more today, in a wholesale capacity. I also think that Amazon's a really great model for brands who are, in one country or a few countries that want to expand into many countries. The traditional barriers around operating costs, marketing costs, etc., are largely perhaps not removed but minimalized when you're talking about jumping on the platform. And then beyond that, and some of these things aren't in Australia yet. Amazon Flex is, that's pretty new, but it's that sort of Uber style delivery where anyone with a mobile phone and a van can jump into their car and deliver parcels direct to consumer. Equally, Amazon Prime Air, which has been in testing for a long time, and it's all about automated drone deliveries, and so that will come. Amazon, their mission really is to get products to consumers within 30 minutes of order, which will be pretty incredible if they do achieve that. And then in the US they've also got Amazon Air, which is different to Amazon Prime Air. Amazon Air is it's literally a cargo airline dedicated to Amazon deliveries. So it's just as successful as Amazon is, I think they're just scratching the surface in terms of disrupting seller models and fulfillment models.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, clearly Amazon, and we know this from other geographies, as you were pointing out, it's just this massive ecosystem. We could probably do a 20 podcast series on every single component. But today, obviously, we're talking about Amazon Vendor Central specifically. And before we kind of, jump off the cliff on that topic there, let me just pause and say, obviously, you're a founder of Totality. Just tell me a little bit more. How did Totality start? What was the driving force? How did it come about?
Yeah, well, it started very much as a side hustle. My wife and I were white labeling products out of China and sending it over to the US to sell on Amazon over there. And we quickly realized that just understanding how Amazon's algorithm works, a little bit of optimization, we could win against established brands who were being perhaps a little bit more complacent or didn't have the same knowledge that we did on the platform. And we were able to win against those brands. And so we've been doing that off and on for a number of years. And then it was last year, actually, I reached out to a good friend of mine who is the CEO, and he won't mind me sharing this. He's the CEO of a company called Bounce. For those not familiar with Bounce, they do a lot of, it's a health and wellness brand. They do protein balls, keto bars, chocolates, a kids range, etc. And I just saw an opportunity for them to really improve the way that they were selling via Amazon, based on the experience that my wife and I had learnt doing it via Seller Central in the US. And we made an agreement that we'd give it a go, and we did do that. I think we were on a 6-month trial initially, but within 3 months, we had generated more wholesale orders for them in that 1 month than they did for the entire year prior. So that said to us that we're on the right path. We can really help brands generate sales via the platform, and we just made the decision that one of us would jump out of our full-time job and go and help other brands, and it's just sort of grown really quickly from there.
Yeah, look, that's really fantastic to hear. And there's a bit of a common thread there. I've heard it earlier this week around partnering, finding sort of an initial reference client and really having an open and honest conversation and saying, let's see if we can work this together. Let's see if I can prove your results. And that certainly seemed to be the case with you and driving the orders for Bounce. So let's talk about being a vendor on Amazon. Why would a brand, someone like Bounce, consider even becoming a vendor? Why not go on the seller route, or why not look at other e-commerce options? Why become a vendor on Amazon's vendor platform?
Yeah, sure. Firstly, I think Amazon Seller Central, I love it. I think it works for a lot of brands. And in the same breath, I don't think Amazon Vendor Central is for everybody, but it certainly does work well for brands who are well established, they're already driving high volume sales in other channels, and they're very familiar with wholesale relationships, leveraging their distribution partners to get their products in front of consumers. And it really, it's good for clients who want to be a little bit more hands-off. They want to get their weekly purchase orders as opposed to worrying about direct-to-consumer fulfillment. And also brands who want to leverage the algorithmic price management that comes with Amazon. Now that we'll talk about that later, but that can also be a bit of a con as far as the Vendor Central model. But it is a really great tool to leverage. Also as a vendor, you get category management support, which you don't get on Seller Central, and it also suits brands that want to be a little bit hands off as far as customer service goes. They don't have to deal with any customer dialogue, returns, anything of that nature. And that's all handled by Vendor Central.
Yeah, I was going to ask you a bit more about that, actually, because category management support probably has some meaning to someone. If you're supplying Woolworths or Coles or Kmart in this market, you have a rough idea of what that means. But how would you summarize that service? Because openly, I'm hearing kind of positive and negatives in relation to that service, and seems to really depend on the vendor manager. But what is a reasonable expectation around the category management support from Amazon in Australia?
I think the best way to sort of describe it is, and look, it does depend on the brand and the volume that brand's doing, which will depend on the level of support that you get. But it's very different than a category manager that you might see in some of those other traditional retail businesses that you mentioned before. Vendor Central, and they'll admit this themselves, it still is a self-service platform. So you really want to get into it with the understanding that 99% of it, you're going to be looking after yourself from an everyday management and operational perspective. And to consider the category management that you get there as a nice to have, as opposed to an expectation. I think from my experience, they're thin on the ground, and you're not necessarily going to get immediate responses when you're looking for them. And it's just not their model. It's not sort of a fault of theirs. It's just not their model.
Yeah, no, look, they're certainly different. And I think this sort of leads on to the next thing I wanted to pick your brain on is around expectations. Certainly, when I was working with a number of Amazon vendors a couple of years ago, there was a lot of hype. Amazon was launching. Amazon was aggressively recruiting vendors, placing very large initial purchase orders that started to generate a lot of excitement. But then the sellout didn't happen, right? And there was just, all the stock sort of piling up inside Amazon's warehouse. New purchase orders weren't being generated, and a lot of brands probably feeling a little bit underwhelmed by the sales performance. And this was 3-4 years ago. Where do you feel that topic is now? And when you hear that, what's your response? Where do you feel they may have gone wrong?
Yeah, I think it's a misconception out there around what does the relationship with Amazon actually mean when you're a vendor. I think often people engage with Amazon in a vendor capacity in the hope that Amazon will take care of almost all of the direct-to-consumer selling. They'll generate high-volume sales, and that will, inevitably trigger wholesales orders for those brands. But the reality is, and the actual amount of work that the brand needs to do from an optimization perspective is almost identical to what you need to do in Seller Central. You still need to manage your catalog. You still need to optimize that catalog to ensure that it's retail ready, and that Amazon's algorithms are going to push your products. You're going to get them in front of the right people who are going to buy. And at that point, Amazon will start triggering orders. It's definitely not a set and forget platform. And I think that's, to answer your question, I think that's where people have gone wrong. They sign up with Amazon, they get an initial order, and then sort of nothing happens. And then they stop getting orders, and they don't hear from Amazon. And I think they get frustrated at that point.
So I want to go a bit deeper on this topic of optimization, because I feel a lot of vendors, particularly, don't have the optimization skills, because typically the retailers have done that for them. I'm talking about the bricks and mortar retailers. What does optimization look like? And the vendors that you're working with, or perhaps you're doing this service on their behalf, what are you looking for? What boxes are you ticking to say, right, this, I'm really happy with the level of optimization we've done that. And obviously that spans content, but that may cover other topics as well. What does it look like from your point of view? What does success look like in that area? Very long question, but I think there's probably a big answer there too, hopefully.
Yeah, it is a big answer, and there is a lot involved. I mean, I think, Amazon's algorithm favors products that they consider retail ready, and there's like a whole checklist that sits around that. But I think first and foremost, you've got to remember that Amazon is a very visual platform. So the first thing that I look at when I'm doing perhaps a health audit on a brand is the quality of images that they have on their product listings. Do they have 5 or 6 really high quality images there. Is it a mix of studio shots, lifestyle shots, infographics, and more commonly videos? You can put videos on your product pages, and that they can help drive sales as well. So that would be the first thing that I would look at, because it's the first thing that the customer looks at. The other thing is having a great title. It's the most important SEO real estate on a product listing. And it's about understanding if, has the brand used all 250 characters available to them? Have they researched what keywords their clients are winning on? And have they packed their title with the right keywords so that they can be organically found in search results? And it's a real fine balance, because you're writing your title to appeal to human beings, who are getting on Amazon looking to buy your products. But equally, you're writing for a machine. You need the Amazon algorithm to pick up on those keywords so that you can be found. And then, if that's your most important real estate, the next thing we will go to look at are the bullet points. Amazon gives you 5 bullet points, real estate of 5 bullet points that you can use. So are you using that real estate? And again, have you done your research to work out what are the keywords that are going to drive sales for your products? And have you packed your bullet points with those keywords? And then Amazon also gives you some search terms in the back end that you can leverage, which is where you can put spelling mistakes and things like that, just that you don't want to have in your main copy. The other thing that is important around being retail ready is ratings and reviews. So, and we're a funny bunch in Australia, because we do shop by looking at ratings and reviews. We all do. But for whatever reason, culturally, we're terrible at giving reviews. So that's a big challenge for vendors, is how do you grow reviews? But Amazon will look at, does your product have a certain amount of ratings and a certain amount of reviews against it? And once it hits that threshold, their algorithm starts to favor your products. They also look at inventory health, and that can mean different things depending on whether you're an Amazon seller or an Amazon vendor. But certainly in vendor land, it is, if Amazon triggers a purchase order, have you confirmed that you can accept that order within 24 to 48 hours? And are you able to fulfill those orders? There are essentially 3 things that a vendor has to do when a purchase order comes in. That's confirm the order, they have to set up their shipping plan, and then they need to create an invoice against that purchase order. And if all of those things are happening, that's a tick in the box as far as Amazon is concerned. And then I guess an extension to all of that, and it doesn't necessarily sit within what is considered a retail-ready product, but I'm a big fan of brands setting up a shop front within Amazon. It's a destination where customers can actually go and look at all of your products, and you can tell your brand story and such. And you have to be a brand owner to sell on Amazon Vendor Central anyway. But one of those tools is called A+ content, or it used to be called enhanced brand content. And what it is if you're on the listing page of a product and you scroll down towards the bottom, you get a section there that says, typically from the manufacturer, where you can tell your brand story and you can cross-sell products. And it's a good way to sort of pack in more SEO. And I think on average, the last stats I read on it were that if you had that A+ content, you could drive up to 5% more in sales just from having that. And then, getting involved in the promotions that Amazon run. We just had Prime Day. And it literally just cleaned out some of my clients in terms of the stock that they had, using coupons and one of the biggest things, which we could spend a whole podcast on, is sponsored advertising. You can't win on the Amazon platform unless you're investing in sponsored advertising. So I just went through that list at a really high level and just sort of listed them off. There's a lot of things there that you've got to manage in order to be successful.
Yeah, sure. Now, look, there's a lot of components there, and you and I could do an even more detailed hands-on workshop, covering each of those, and some great content on LinkedIn out there as well. I do have two specific questions in relation to that long list. The first one is about advertising. I'll hold the other one in a sec, but how evolved / sophisticated is the advertising platform in Australia versus, what you've seen in the US or in the Amazon ecosystem in Europe? How would you compare it at the moment?
Oh, look, I think it is very sophisticated. I think where some of those other larger markets have an advantage is that they have so many third-party apps that can plug into those platforms to create a whole level of sophistication on top of what Amazon already offers. But it's set up for any level of education you might have around PPC or sponsored advertising. We always recommend using all of their tools, so you can set up automatic sponsored brand campaigns to help that they are there to research what keywords are we going to win on, where are we going to sell our products outside of the obvious ones. It's using things like their sponsored brand campaigns and their sponsored brand video campaigns, sponsored display campaigns as well. Having that whole mix before you really get deep dive into manual sponsored campaigns, which are really, once you start to get a better understanding of the search terms that you're going to win on. Yeah.
Look, as you were talking, one of the things that's really clear to me is this is not a hands-off channel, right? This is even though you're selling products to Amazon, which arguably, is sort of a wholesale type relationship, Amazon is technically the merchant of record. They're doing the pricing, they're selling things on the vendor platform. Actually, you are very involved in terms of managing purchase orders, running campaigns, optimizing listings, creating A+ content, making the most of the other marketing opportunities like, Prime deals and the like that Amazon throws at you. So it's certainly not a, set and forget type of arrangement, and I guess that's clearly why some brands have turned to you to help them on that.
That's why also, Paul, that's why it's a good time in Australia to do it, because you can't win on Amazon unless you are investing in advertising. But as an example, if you're in the US and you're listing a brand new product, you're going to be many, many, many pages down away from page one. And Amazon, by their own admission, will say that 70% of their customers don't look past page one. So if you're not there, you're not winning. And so the investment in advertising to get you anywhere near page one is going to be far more expensive than it would be here in Australia, because you're comparing an audience of 330 million with, I think we're somewhere near 27 million here in Australia. So whilst you might advertise a new product here in Australia, you're still unlikely to be on page one straight away, but the investment to get to page one is less. And then, as you pointed out at the start, Amazon is still relatively new in Australia. So if you do it now and you get on the platform, as more and more of your competitors jump on the platform, you've got an economic win immediately.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's certainly there's still a window here in Australia to to get into a good position with relatively moderate investment, and something that can pay off in years down the road. Let me come back to my other practical question. It's a very nitty-gritty question, but I think it's something that a lot of our audience have struggled with. I know we have in the past, and that is, as a brand owner coming on the Amazon vendor platform, it is quite likely that you may already see a seller or another distributor selling your products, and therefore they've created the product pages, and what you see on those product pages doesn't necessarily reflect how you want your content and your products to show up on Amazon. And from my own experience, I know is getting that fixed can be a very painful process. What insights and tips do you have for us with respect to that question?
Yeah, it's a challenging one for brands because you don't want to upset other distributors that might be partners of yours, but to your point, sometimes you just don't know who these sellers are. They're just selling your products on the platform, and in some ways competing with you, and also not representing your brand in the right light. But as a vendor, as I mentioned before, you have to be a brand owner, and you register yourself in Amazon Brand Registry Program, and that provides a whole bunch of tools. Some of those tools are around advertising and marketing, creating stores and the A+ content that I spoke about earlier. But other ones are designed to protect your brand. And so as the brand owner, you can actually remove sellers selling your products. And there's different ways you can do it. When we first started Totality, we were perhaps a little bit more aggressive around how we did it. And that is basically, we used to set up cases within Amazon Brand Registry. We used to give them all of the listings that we wanted removed, and Amazon would remove them because those other sellers didn't have permission to be using our IP to sell those products. But I think as we've evolved, we take a bit more of a lightly touch on that, and we actually approach the sellers first and have a conversation with them, and sort of say to them, listen, either we don't mind you selling it, but you have to bring it up to a certain level, or you don't have permission to be using our imagery and our IP, so we prefer you don't. And in 9 times out of 10, they'll remove those listings, but where they don't, you can leverage Amazon's tools and have them removed. Sorry, Paul, I think I can't hear you there.
That's I'll blame the mute button for that. That brings me to the last topic for today, and that is really around. I used to call it channel conflict, right? Vendors. If you go out there to brands, if you say who wants to grow their e-commerce sales, everyone will you say yes, right? Who wants to participate in a new channel that is growing at strong double digits? Everyone say yes. If you then say who wants to go on Amazon vendor, some will say, oh, I'm a little bit worried about because I've got a really vested relationship with Dan Murphy's or with JB Hi-Fi or with Bunnings or some other really big retailer, and I worry that the upside from something like an Amazon may not justify the downside from a relationship going sour on the other side. How do you face into those more strategic channel conversations?
Yeah, great question. And it comes up all the time. In fact, it would be the number one biggest concern brands have when I talk to them about potentially considering Amazon Vendor Central. Because as I mentioned at the start, you as an Amazon vendor, you don't own your stock. Amazon owns the stock. So they can change the price. And you do get an opportunity to say, look, this is the recommended retail price. And Amazon does respect that. But at the same time, if they want to move the stock or the algorithm is seeing competition elsewhere, their algorithm will change the pricing. And so their concern is, well, what are my already established distribution partners, i.e. the big supermarkets and such, what are they going to say, when Amazon's undercutting us? And really, there's ways you can get around it. And probably the most common one is to come up with Amazon specific product offerings. It might be bundles, for example, that you're not offering through some of those other channels. So there's definitely ways of thinking about it so that you don't upset the apple cart, as it were.
Yeah, no, very, very challenging topic and important to get right. Now, we're almost out of time, but we do have a couple of questions from our audience. So this is my favorite part of the podcast because I get to put you on the spot without any notice and really test your expertise. So look, the good news is we got time for one or two, but let me try and bring up here. It comes from Krishna. What is the estimated monthly GMV for Amazon in Australia? Now that might be a tricky one. I don't know I did Google it as you were talking before, so I've got the answer here.
What is the answer? I'd like to know.
It's according to their statutory financial statements, they just hit 1.8 billion Australian dollars in 2021. So you're factoring some growth, reasonably strong double digit. Safe to say they've probably crossed the 2 billion mark. Last time I checked, there was still a little bit smaller than eBay here in Australia, but I think there's a good chance that they may cross over later this year or early next year or so.
Yeah, we've got a decent e-com penetration rate in Australia. I think it's something like 74%, which is pretty high. And a lot of what I hear is that Amazon will take 25% of that. Which is a fairly big number by 2025. Still a fair way from the US, that is already 50% of all online sales. But here in Australia, it's new and it's growing.
I've got another question here from Tim, who talks about contribution authority in Vendor Central versus Seller Central. I'm not sure he's talking contribution or content here, but I've certainly come across this as well, where you're saying, I want to update the content. I'm the vendor, I'm the brand owner, I'm uploading it, and Amazon rejects it. Have you come across that? And what's your response to dealing with that?
Yeah, we come across it all the time, and I think it's just one of the frustrations that people have as vendors and sellers on Amazon, if they're the brand owner. I mean, the first thing is you've got to be a brand owner and registered in the Amazon brand registry. But the other thing I would say is that it's persistence. And that's quite literally all it is. There's no sort of magic wand you can wave to fix that every time. When you create a case and you ask Amazon to accept the changes that you've made, and it gets rejected for a million different reasons that they'll come up with, it's about pressing them, asking it again, trying to be more clear around what you're trying to get. Eventually, you will win, but sometimes it can take months and many emails and phone calls to Amazon to get those things changed. Unfortunately, that's just part of the game.
I do remember specific, I'm going to say nightmares, but it's probably too strong, but keeping very detailed spreadsheets, ASIN by ASIN, and tracking, have our preferred content changes now flown through, whether it be images or bullet points. And certainly what you were saying was our experience, and this is a couple of years old now, but just logging a new case and a new case and a new case, and whoever, let's see if Amazon gives up before you do, and you sort of get your content fixed. I think
Amazon changes it themselves sometimes. Sometimes you'll put the effort into optimizing a listing, and then if you've got to keep looking at your catalog, because every now and then those listings change. The title will be different. The bullet points will be shorter and different.
Yeah.
For whatever reason.
All right, one last question, which I think is actually a really good one to finish off. It comes from Krishna. Can you throw some light on the cost of operations for a brand selling, on vendor versus seller? In other words, where do you make more money, right? It's how do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, look, they're pretty similar. I think you come out pretty similar on each of those platforms. In Vendor Central, you don't pay anything to be there, but you certainly do pay marketing costs and damage costs, and you certainly do. Amazon will clip the ticket on all of the sales, and that varies depending on the product and category that you're selling within, which is really no different to Seller Central. If you go to Seller Central, it's really clearly listed on their website what those costs are. But I'm happy to talk anyone through the individual cost items around Vendor Central line by line if they want to hear about it.
Great. Well, we are out of time, and we've gone a little bit over actually. So let's wrap it up there. First of all, Warren, thank you for coming on the show today. Really appreciate your openness, your expertise. Love the fact that you've put your hand up and you're wrestling through some of the challenges around Amazon Vendor, which are not straightforward. And appreciate the practical tips along the way too. So thanks for coming on the show today. Now, just in case if there are any viewers wondering, hey, I could certainly help. I could help. I could use Warren's help, or I'd love to pick his brain. What is the best way to get hold of you?
Yeah, well, you can get me directly on LinkedIn, or equally you could go to our website, which is totality.com. That's totalYTY.com, and just go to the contact us page. And my phone number's there, or you can submit a form that way.
Thank you very much. All right, that's it for this episode of Marketplace Masters. Thank you so much for tuning in. And don't forget to visit Merchant Spring and have a look at those new vendor analytics that we've just released. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.